Lisa, welcome aboard to the show today. So happy to have you.
Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
There's one thing that I think a lot of our audience is curious about. What makes for a great sales team member? You talked about building teams. What do we even look for in the hiring process?
For a salesperson, I think I don't want them to be like a salesperson. I think that would be the first quality is that if you seem salesy, you are not going to be the right fit for my organization, maybe for another organization. But I do think that there is a certain quality for somebody who's going to do sales and obviously having confidence in yourself and being able to be confident in what you're selling and really believe in it. I think that is one of the best skills that I could be looking for when you're just really passionate about it. Because I think passion's going to sell anything if you have the right story and the right, product and company behind you. So I think that would be my number one quality I'd look for.
So what is an unexpected answer to be a good salesman, you need to be not salesy. What does that mean? Let's dig into the not salesy part of it.
Well, I think that, sometimes salespeople tend to have a pitch. They tend to stay on a script. They can be pushy. There's all these sales organizations that teach you do this, do that, put everybody in a process. And, some of that does work. And I'm not going to go against all these amazing sales organizations out there because it depends who you're selling to. But in my
Mm,
business, where I'm selling to, certain kinds of companies, which is like early growth companies, they really they don't want to be sold something. They want a solution. So, when people do sales, a lot of times they're presenting, they're pitching. And I think that in this business, you need to listen, 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 understand, feel them, feel where they are, know that they're the right customer. So, I mean, I feel like you have to be a little intuitive. Like, is
right.
this even the right customer for us? So, and I think once you do that listening and understanding, you can come back with a better product for them because obviously we're not going to sell the same product to everybody. But you want to develop a product for them and then make sure it's solving their problem. So you're not really selling, you're solving a problem.
So this is there's a lot of issues that I see on the ground with what you're saying. So I want to dive into it.
Hmm.
On the one hand, we want our salespeople to listen, but what I've seen a lot of times in the sales process is that listening is almost cursory. It's just almost a process to just let the customer be heard, just so the salesperson can start selling. There isn't necessarily good interaction between the sales team and the executives or product or engineering. What have you done in your organizations to make sure that that listening is real and it's not
Hmm.
just lip service?
Hmm. That personalization is that the client knows we're excited about them and they know we want to work with them. And so I think that's like a little bit of a difference is that we take more of a personalized approach to it. It's not just a process, it's not just trying to get numbers in the door. It's definitely carefully thought out, and our growth is also carefully thought out because you don't want to sell things too that you can't deliver.
Right.
So that's the other thing is you do need to listen because you do need to make sure you can deliver it. And then the other thing that we do is we bring the entire team into those sales calls so that they get to meet our entire team before they even work with us. So I think that that's really important because, again, if it's not the right team and you don't feel that energy with the team, you're not going to want to work with us. So if you're somebody who has a very process way you like to do things and you want to run the process and you want to be the manager of the project from the client side, that's not what we really want. We don't want the client to be driving the process. We want them to be part of the process, but we want to be driving the process together. So there's all those kinds of things that really tie into my business, which is web design and development for early growth and growing clients, and just being able to, we don't know what we want to sell to them. So we have to listen. So we don't really have a choice, I guess, in a way.
Hmm. Fair enough. I appreciate that. You talked about depends who you're selling to and what the, allow me to add some words into your mouth, the persona of the client is,
Mm-hmm.
and that there might be an issue in even being able to deliver to the client.
Mm-hmm.
Have you kind of done this early analysis, listened to the client and said, no, we're not the right fit for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I did have, like, I specifically remember this because when we were taking on the sales call, the client kept asking us to over and over come in and present over and over. And like,
Mm,
that's great. But like, there wasn't a lot, they weren't sharing a lot of information. They're just like, come pitch, come pitch, come pitch. And so, I said to my salesperson at the time, I was like, I don't think this is a good fit for us. I just think that the way that their process is going down, that I don't
mm,
think they're going to work in our process. And so she was like, no, 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 I think it's a great client. So we kind of like butted heads a little bit over. And I said,
right.
okay, like you do it. And so again, they brought us in for the five times, the whole team. And I was just by this point, like not happy at all. So I think when I came in, the client started again, like taking over the conversations and
Mm,
like sort of like just basically leading the whole thing. And I was trying to reel the whole thing back in. And, at one point I was just like, hey, look, can we move back? Like, let's start here. And the client did not like me doing that. They wanted to dominate the whole conversation and create this like different kind of hierarchy where like they were the boss and we were like, they were paying us. And so that's not how we work. Like, we are your partner. We don't want to come in where we're going to get treated that way. And so that at that point, um, I was like, I was nice and everything, but I definitely had to reel it back in. And a week later, they called and they said they didn't, so we went with it. We went with like selling to them. And a week later, they came back and they said they didn't want to buy from us because they didn't like the owner. And
you
I
know,
was
so,
like, first of all, like, that's fine. If they didn't like that, I was trying to reel them in, and I was just doing it for the greater good of them and the greater good of the team and trying to reel it all in, because if they had to come in under that thinking they could run the process, I mean, it just was going to be a nightmare. And I was just trying to avoid that. So I knew it wasn't a good client. I told my salesperson that, how sometimes salespeople can be, oh, I just want to,
well,
so
they,
the
they
good
want to
part
hit
is,
their,
and I could have shut it
mm,
down, but I didn't. I felt like this could be a learning experience. I'll give her the chance. If she thinks it's a good client, then I'll trust her. And you know what? We learned what to look for. I already knew because I've been doing agency work my whole career. And so I know how to spot a tough client when I see one. But so yeah, but that was the first time I think anyone said they didn't like me. I'm
that
like, what an
that's
answer to give my salesperson. I'm like, I'm so glad that they didn't hire us.
that's brutal feedback, though. I would say that you dodged a bullet. I mean, there's
Exactly.
that's a red flag in itself,
Yeah.
right? That kind of if you're hiring somebody to get their help and you're not willing to listen to what they have to say, um, that's a red flag in itself, I would argue.
Hmm.
I want to kind of jump back in the pipeline. We talked a little bit about the sales process and the people and what their skills are,
Hmm.
but let's go back to the fact that we're just starting to develop a pipeline.
Hmm.
What's the equation that you have for just bringing these customers to the table to have a discussion?
Hmm.
And is it the same for every customer, or how do you kind of figure out what the right equation is for the right customer?
So in terms of bringing in leads for them and filling up their pipeline, I mean, it definitely depends on the client because, some clients' pipelines are so easy to fill and others are very difficult. So, maybe I'll just speak from my own pipeline since I'm the most familiar with that. Um, I think, and I mean, I think this kind of runs across the board. And I think this might be one of the reasons why people choose ladybugs is that, you want to build trust with that persona, whoever it is, before they even call you. And so, a lot of agencies have made the mistake of like not promoting themselves because they're so busy working and and doing the work for the clients that they kind of forget about themselves. And when you're an expert at marketing, you have to show your clients that you're an expert at marketing. So I think it's really important for any business, not just mine, to build that trust to your audience, wherever that audience might be. It could be online, it could be at trade shows, it could be anywhere, but you want to have a reputation. That's first and foremost, I think, one of the most important things you can do. So, you can sell sales email, or you can send sales emails all day long. You can, take over SEO all day long. But like, if you don't have a reputation, nobody's going to hire you. So, I think that's been a really great way to help not just ourselves, but our clients. The other thing is just being transparent about what your solutions are and the pricing behind them. Because if somebody comes to your company and they think, let's say you're selling SaaS software and they think it's $30 a month, and it's $3,000 a month, you're just wasting your time talking to those customers. They're not. And the other thing is when you have a business and you want to completely delight and over deliver, the minute somebody calls you for pricing and you're way out of their price range, you've already created a bad experience with your company and they don't even know you. They're like, oh, they're overpriced. So you really need to make sure you're positioning yourself the right way with the right people. I mean, I would say those are the two biggest things that I think are important.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I want to touch on those one at a time. Pricing is such a difficult issue. I've seen companies that they put their pricing on the web. It's so clear, crystal, right? 3-tiered, you know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, if you want something super special, come talk to us, but you can get the trial, the out of the box, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other companies where no matter what I do, they just won't put their pricing online.
Mm-hmm.
Is there justification where you definitely should put your pricing online, but also justification where you shouldn't put your pricing online? How do you think through that decision?
I mean, that is just totally a business decision. There's really no right or wrong. Um, and in my experience with my own business, what happens is when you become a leader in a certain industry, there's going to be a lot of followers. So sometimes having your pricing out there and sometimes even your people can create competition. And so, in my personal experience, that's happened to us because we are one of the few agencies that's very transparent about our pricing. And then, and if people are going to price shop, they're going to price shop. So, once you have your competition with similar pricing, then now what are you selling on? So it can be a very difficult decision to make. But to be honest, I would rather talk to the right customers all day long than talk to the wrong customers all day long. And they can talk to our competitors. And if they're not going to hire us and they're going to hire a competitor, then I guess you just have to accept that if you're going to make those decisions. And even, I was just in this experience myself where I'm looking to change my CRM and my project management system. And so, some companies were very transparent about their pricing and others still haven't given me the pricing. So if I knew the pricing was going to be way out of the ballpark, I wouldn't have called in the first place, but you're kind of making an assumption that everybody's pricing's around the same. So it's hard, when people don't put their pricing out there because then you don't know if they're going to be a good fit for you or not pricing wise. So as a customer, I don't want to have to call 5 different companies and get their pricing. I would rather know that they're in my ballpark,
Right.
So if you don't want to put your pricing on there, there's other ways to kind of capture that. And that might be like lookalike clients, the clients that you're working for. So if you're an agency and you only work with big pharma, then you want to make sure you have lots of big pharma on there. So people know, yeah, I only work with big pharma, therefore, our prices are going to be higher. If you're a smaller company that works with small pharma, same thing. But, I feel like in our industry, I still don't know if it was the right decision or not, to be honest, because of that, because of competition. But you know what? Sometimes I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just the leader and I'll just have to come up with something new.
There's
Because
definitely
we have
something there's
to.
definitely something interesting about different pricing depending on your niche market.
Hmm.
That's really interesting, and if that's portrayed in your branding, then
Hmm.
it definitely allows you to be in that region. I've seen different examples where it's just made complete different sense. So for example, when there's so much variance in what customers want and it's almost impossible to really package it,
Mm-hmm.
for example, what Siemens was doing around manufacturing automation, it's really difficult to price online.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, when you're selling a piece of hardware and maybe two or three of your competition is actually giving pricing online and you're not, it almost
Mm-hmm.
feels like you're disadvantaging yourself by
Mm-hmm.
creating that opacity.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like it is a case by case decision, but there are some
Mm-hmm.
guidelines to it. What are the what are the unconventional strategies, if any, that you've kind of used and have been incredibly successful? And I'll give you an example of one of the things that you said today that were kind of interesting. You talked about reputation and almost thought leadership. Traditionally, when you talk to marketing people, that's the last thing that you do. But you're saying no, actually, reputation can have extreme value at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
What are other interesting strategies that are, let's say, not the trotted path?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so reputation is one thing. And like you said, thought leadership, which I think is something different than reputation. So I think
Tell
that
us, tell us more. How so?
thought leadership is more like putting you at the forefront of your industry and what you're doing to innovate and change and be a leader. And I think people are going to choose you based on what you're doing and what you're doing for your clients. So I think thought leadership for yourself is huge because, people want to work with the leader. They don't want to work with a follower.
Mm,
People want to work with innovators. They don't want to work with people who are copying other companies or don't have unique strategies for how they, do their services or products. So I think that is a huge thing. And personal branding also, getting to know the people, even if you're a bigger company. Like look at Sarah Blakely. I mean,
mm,
from Spanx. I mean, she's one of the most successful women in America, and yet she is on, LinkedIn. She's putting up videos. She's commenting like she's a real person. And so, that kind of sort of personal branding, it doesn't have to be like me all the time.
right.
But it can be, just getting involved. Like for me, what I do is I do a lot of mentorship.
Mm,
And for personal branding. And so that kind of stuff is great because you're building relationships. And where do
right.
relationships go? Relationships lead to sales. So there's lots of different ways to do that side of it. And then in terms of thought leadership, there's lots of ways to do that too. So, some people do it through PR, some people do it through speaking, some people do it by actually going out and volunteering their services, or there's just lots of ways to do it. And speaking is definitely one of the really great ways to do thought leadership. So,
The personal brand is so interesting. I think that when we're senior executives, then we kind of have control over what we want to do, and nobody's gonna get too much in our face.
mhm,
Um, but when you have a company with 100 employees, I've seen both sides of the argument. On one, like, no, on don't do anything, too much. You're not representing the company. Don't do anything online that represents us. But then I've also heard you have an untapped resource here of your employees to create their own personal branding, and how that can really empower the company's lead sales process.
mhm.
Where do you fall? And I have a guess. Um, and if you fall on the side of, yes, you should empower your employees, how do you do that right so it doesn't kind of go in the wrong direction?
My focus on this company is creating leaders and, building leadership skills and creating a team that's also innovative in terms of leadership and how they lead our other team members and how they lead our clients. So I think that you have to sort of choose where those people are going to, they have to decide where their strengths are.
Yeah.
And then, like, just as an example, there's a doctor that I follow online, and her whole Instagram is all about her own personal journey of health.
Mm,
So, there's that side of it where people can like really resonate with you and resonate to your story. And so I've had to work with my team to do that stuff. And it's, I think it's great because I think they feel no, I don't want to say important, but they feel like empowered. Like
right.
I get to talk about what my expertise is. I get to be a part of the company. I get to represent my company. And of course, there's only certain people that are going to really want to do that. Not everybody's going to want to do that.
Right.
But I think the people that want to do it are the people that should do it. But I've also seen it go sour too. So, where somebody's working for a company and they build up their reputation so much and they leave. So you do have to a little bit keep it away from the company. So when I do a lot of thought leadership, like it's not always about ladybugs. It's just Lysa Miller, entrepreneur. For my senior salesperson, she does everything around sales. It's not always about ladybugs. So that way, no matter where she goes, she'll be a sales expert. You don't want to be ladybugs wherever you go, and you have to be. I think as a company, you kind of have to be okay with that. Like if she goes somewhere else and does that, I have to be okay with that. And that's just, again, that's part of the process. It's kind of like the pricing. It's like you have to decide what can you and can't live with.
Yeah. This is such a, I think, a sensitive point, right? Like, what happens when you invest and grow your employees and they leave? And then the obvious, internet joke meme, which has a lot of truth to it, is, what happens if you don't and they stay? And you kind of, right? So that's the other side of it. I've hired a lot of people in my history, and I'll tell you the thing I always tell my employees: do a good job, work hard, be phenomenal. If you do that, I will help you do one of two things. I will help you get promoted and successful inside of the company, or I will help you find that next gig. And I think that I really truly believe that helping your employees successful, whether it's in or outside of the company, that will allow them to really be the best that they possibly can while they're with you. And, if their journey calls them elsewhere, then, so be it. You can't really control people's lives. All you can do is wish them luck. So I really appreciate your philosophy. Lysa, this has been such a pleasure. We have only one scripted question in the show, and it's a really difficult one because it's a personal one. If you had to go back to 20-something-year-old Lysa, and you had to advise her, personal, professional, anything, what would be the advice that you give her?
Well, I'm still in my 20s, so I guess I just have to go back a couple of years. I'm
Fair
just
enough.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I have to think about that one a little bit because the wise Lysa, the 50-year-old Lysa,
Right.
Would say that every difficult journey has led to, to a
Yes.
path of happiness. So I wouldn't change anything, but I think I would tell my younger self that like it's okay. Like you don't need to be stressed. You don't need to worry. Everything's going to work out. And like you try to have that attitude. But when you've been through the process of pretty much everything by the time you're 50, you're okay. And I've always been okay. And I think that as younger people, we tend to think everything's has to happen now and everything has a sense of urgency. And so I think that we just need to like go back and, pat ourselves and be like, it's okay. Like this stuff is normal. You're going to go through this, but it's going to be okay. And so I think that's what I would tell myself. I think my mother probably told me that and I didn't listen.
Lysa, what an absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you.